Hello and welcome to the Monitoring Five9 and Microsoft Teams with NetBees webinar. We are going to get started here. Just a few things before we begin. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to use either the chat function or the Q&A function. We will answer all questions that you have at the end of the webinar before we do the raffle for the Amazon gift card. And with that, I think we're ready to go.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Panos, and I'll let Jess get started.
Thank you. All right, here's our agenda for today. So we'll do a quick overview and then go into remote contact center as a service and unified communications as a service support challenges. So, and then Five9 and Microsoft Teams approach to these challenges, and then the NetBees approach and how we utilize these integrations, followed by our Q&A with Pano and then the raffle. As you see, we are the presenters today. So Pano's already introduced himself, but I'll let him take it away from here. He'll be showing you a demo.
All right, thank you, Jess, for the introduction. And yeah, thanks everybody for attending today's webinar. And we'll talk about what are the challenges for offering support to call center agents that use contact center as a service and unified communication as a service software like Five9 and MS Teams, which is today's topic. And what are the challenges for the help desks and IT teams of the world to support the remote users, right? There are ways to do it, of course, today. Everybody does it daily, right? But by talking to many customers, and hopefully I'm going to convince you that the current process is cumbersome, non-scalable, and costly, right? So it costs time that you need, to your help desk to support several hundred users or thousands of users. It costs working hours to your remote agents that if they have voice problems or ISPs, they cannot be on the queue to receive calls and get paid. And it costs, of course, to the company, right? It costs if you are, if you have getting support and the audio and video is not like what's supposed to be, it costs the reputation of the company, right? So for all these reasons, it's important to be able to offer top tier support to our own call center agents so they can help with customer facing services that our customers need. So these are the results from a survey that was done in 2021 by EMA Research. And that was at the height of the pandemic. Of course, everybody was working from home. And at the time they asked, hey, what are the main challenges? What are the main kind of types of tickets that help desks receive from remote users, right? At the time, again, they were working from home or from wherever they were based, right? And of course, surprise, surprise, the home Wi-Fi was at the top of the list. Of course, users were using consumer-grade hardware and routers, and that the IT team and help desk didn't have any visibility into their settings or control or what type of router they were using, right? Again, closely followed by VPN issues. Many of you probably have some VPN setup for your remote employees. And then we're going to infrastructure issues like SD-WAN, gateways, routers, right? And then application availability and performance cannot be taken out of the picture. It's not only the connectivity to the cloud that goes through Wi-Fi, ISP, or VPN. There are cases, of course, that the application itself at the end of the, I would say, the chain could also be facing problems, right? But how do we differentiate if an issue is coming, slowness or a packet loss, if issue is coming from the user's Wi-Fi or ISP or the application itself, right? It's challenging. And of course, other common issues we see in networking, like DHCP, DNS, right? It's always the DNS, right? So all these challenges, of course, remain today. Most of the call center employees, although of course at the height of the pandemic, everybody was working from home, the job function of call center employees actually, as you know, lends itself very well to remote work. And many of them have stayed remote if they were not already. And this is what kind of the connectivity looks like. I want to visualize this a little bit, right? Where do these issues we talked about are be coming from? The Wi-Fi, of course. Again, another issue that we've seen many call center help desks ask their agencies to not use Wi-Fi if possible. They ask them to plug in. They ship them, Ethernet cables. When they have a connectivity issue, tell them, hey, first plug in and then call me back to see if the issue is with your Wi-Fi. And if you're in a dense environment, like an apartment building, in a town, in a city, the Wi-Fi can be the breaking point. Then comes the ISP. Each employee might have their own ISP. You don't have control what the connection is. Is it fiber? Is it cable? Right? What I am, for example, right now, I'm plugged in. I don't use Wi-Fi, and I have fiber because of course, in this live event, I don't want to be taking any risks. And the same probably you want for your remote agents. And then you go to the internet, and then you try to access all these services and applications. And of course, today's topic is specifically for Five9 and Microsoft Teams that we'll talk about in more detail in a little bit. But there are, of course, other applications that your employees need to use, right? Your agents, email, Salesforce, storage, etc. So now let's go into the topic of today's webinar here, specifically Five9 and MS Teams. So both of these services, they offer audio, video, and then the whole package of contact center as a service, right? And of course, there are many times that their remote agents need to troubleshoot themselves, and that is a process that is done manually. So Five9, for example, they have a nice write-up, step-by-step process that, when you have an employee at home, tell them, hey, go to that URL over there, follow the, step-by-step instructions, put your name, find if you're closer to Atlanta, your closest data center, and then click the button and it's going to run a test for you, right? So what it does pretty much is that, it runs to the background after it gets this information, a test that measures bandwidth, latency, jitter, packet loss to the closest Five9 data center. And from there, on the employee, after maybe a minute or two, they see something like that on their screen. Okay. So, of course, familiar metrics here, bandwidth, jitter, packet loss, Morse score, right? And then there's also like a table on the bottom that tells you what are the acceptable metrics for its KPI there. Of course, again, it's not something that is difficult to do, but it's manual. Can be done by the employees themselves. And then they have to communicate those results back to the help desk and tell them, hey, my connection looks okay or not. Of course, other obvious issues here is that you need to do that like hundreds of times over the course of the week, or a month. It can be, of course, challenging and time consuming. You have to collect all the results. And the other main, I think, issue is that when the employee runs this test, it's not guaranteed that the issue is really going on. Because if it's an intermittent issue, then maybe it was starting 5 days ago, they decide to report it today, and maybe today wasn't actually happening when they ran the test, right? So you have to take all these things into account when you try to use a process like this. Moving on to Microsoft Teams. Similar approach. There's a URL, you go there, you click it, download some software, installs .NET, etc., and runs a test of the background. As you see here, it runs 474 tests, right? And then it gives you an assessment of your connection. Actually, that's something nice that Microsoft has done, is that they give you kind of a ballpark of where your connection is based on your location. So you can see if you're the kind of top percentile, top 20 percentile, depending on where you are, if you're in a rural area or a busy, city. And then gives you more detailed information. I mean, I don't know exactly what this metric is, but they have some algorithm or some heuristic that, they kind of grade your connectivity, right, based on bandwidth, latency, jitter. And then they give you, of course, more details, right? If you want to drill down about, like, for example, latency to 8888, they give you information like trace out information, even, right? Buffer bloat information. Again, typical things you try to measure when you try to assess somebody's connectivity. Either, before you onboard them, actually that's very typical when, you onboard a new call center agent, you ask them, hey, run this test from your location, tell me what you see so you can assess at least before you put them, in the queue if everything is okay. And if not, they can tell you, okay, you can tell them go, maybe get a better connection, get fiber, etc., right, to make things work at the bare minimum. So by going through these processes, again, there's nothing wrong with them, but they're manual, right? It can be done one by one. They are cumbersome. If you are the IT support team and you need to check on 10 users, you have to communicate with them the instructions, you have to get the results back, review them, see if, if it's an isolated issue on a specific user or a more broad issue, right? And they're reactive. So somebody's going to report, you open a ticket, and then you're going to ask them, hey, run this test. And of course, that means lack of historical information and data. So you don't know when the issue exactly started, and you don't know if it's intermittent, right? You don't know what the baseline of the users was before they reported this issue, right? And its users baseline is going to be different. And now let's move on to what we suggest here, right? And how our customers that run call centers use NetBees to detect these issues, troubleshoot it faster, and bring everybody back online as quickly as possible. So the first step is to install our software monitoring agent on the remote, or let's call it endpoint, not agent, so we don't mix them, right? So install our monitoring endpoint on the remote call center agent's laptop. It's a very lightweight application. You can install it with your management system, Intune, etc. And that's the first step, of course, right? Many of you manage laptops, and what it does is that it runs to the background, so it doesn't need any type of interaction with the user unless you ask them to do something, and then you control it fully from the NetBees dashboard, right? And so what it does now is that it captures information continuously, regardless of if the user is placing a call, or if they're on their laptop, or if they're using any of these applications, right? If they're on Five9 or not, it continuously runs synthetic testing and measures latency to the internet, like the 888, for example, that Microsoft had, right? Or to a Five9 data center, or to Microsoft Teams data center. So it measures latency, packet loss, jitter, and from there derives a MOS score. So continuously what has been the MOS score of the user over a period of time. Of course, collects information such as Wi-Fi quality, signal strength, noise if possible, and tells you, pings the gateway, so you can know if the connection to the gateway is okay or not, right? So the first part of the path we talked about already, right? Then can measure performance to the internet by running a bandwidth test, a download and upload test, okay? And then we talked about latency and VPN. You can run tests over the VPN. So this gives you the ability now to test every part of this path, Wi-Fi, ISP, application, internet, VPN, and have this information on the NetBees dashboard. So again, you don't have to interact with the user. You install it remotely, and then you have a dashboard like this, where you can show your help desk can use to, first of all, if somebody opens a ticket, they can go to the corresponding agent on the dashboard, and from there they can see what the status has been over the period of time, look at the historical, and if you add the proper alerting configuration, you can also be notified about issues the users face, okay, before even they realize it, right? And you can know if an issue is kind of, a broad issue that many users have, if it's an issue related to specific ISP, because we tell you what ISP every user uses, if it's an issue faced only by agents on a specific geographical location, etc. Okay, and then just summarize here, so to show you an example of what this might look like. I have a graph here where I have this Windows agent in our office in Pittsburgh, and we're running this latency, jitter, packet loss test to 5.9, right? So you see here around 10:40, it was a few days ago, 10:40 a.m. Up to that point, there was very high both latency and jitter. So you see like the latency spiking to around 250, 300 milliseconds in some instances. And of course, that increased the jitter. So on the top there, the purple line is the MOS score that's calculated based on the packet loss, jitter, and MOS and latency. And you see how it was also, like going up and down, right, in unacceptable values. So it was around like, 3 or 2.5 when it was kind of dipping around 240. Then after around 240, 1040, things came back to normal. Latency, became less jittery and stabilized around 80 milliseconds. And the MOS score went up to 3.92, which of course, as high as it can get pretty much. So just summarize now, what we talked about today is that the benefits of using a monitoring approach, like we suggest at NetBiz, is to have a scalable way to monitor and address issues that your call center agents face when they are working remotely mostly. Because of course, if they're on campus, you might have your plugged in workstations. You're gonna have Wi-Fi that is managed by you. You have better visibility Wi-Fi, etc. Right? So all the monitoring is done centralized from the NetBiz dashboard. So again, you don't have to collect this data. You don't have to ask the users to do any manual work. They don't have to communicate the results back to you. You can get all the information you want from the specific machine on the NetBiz dashboard. So you can be more proactive. If you set up the right tests and alerting, you'll be able to get notified if somebody's, for example, MOS score drops or latency or jitter goes outside the acceptable limits. And of course, after the fact that somebody opens an issue, you have the historical, go back, understand what's going on. And that's kind of the summary of what NetBiz adds here when you're trying to support those remote users. And yeah, with that, I'm gonna open it to Q&A. And I'm not sure if you have any questions.
We do have some questions.
Okay.
Okay, and in case anyone had choppy service or you could not hear Panos, I could hear him, but I'm not sure if it was you or him. Either way, we recorded it, and I will send out a link to the recording as soon as that is posted to our website. So no worries if you didn't catch the entire webinar. We will send out the recording for you to watch at your leisure.